I want to say a huge thank you to the NLGF and Dublin City Council for having us speak at this. It's a whole area that's really close to my heart. I began working in the whole area of supporting young people as a volunteer with Irish Refugee Council initially, and then later as a project worker with Focus Ireland, working with homeless young people. And I think in our work with LGBT young people, it's important to bring those focuses to the work. I was going to talk kind of broadly about neoliberalism and all of those pieces that is said in the bio, but then when I got into writing something, I thought what was a little missing from the agenda was a conversation about LGBT asylum seekers and refugees, particularly, so I wanted to focus on that. If I had more time, I would also love to speak about or listen to other people speak about LGBT travellers as well. And I know Alba mentioned this already, and again I want to welcome my colleagues from Abbey Point and the LGBT travellers that are here as well. So overall, yes, I want to talk very briefly around what I would describe as the individualisation of rights, maybe in the LGBT community, and how that isn't necessarily working when we're talking about social exclusion, and why there's a need for a broader systemic change. Okay, so when we began Belong To, which is 10 years old this year actually, when we began Belong To 10 years ago, the landscape then and now in terms of policy and visibility, I think, is massively different, and I think there have been very real gains made there. I mean, just as an example, in the first year of Belong To services, in the region of 50 young people accessed an LGBT youth service in Ireland, and last year over 3,000 did, so that there has been a significant change. Issues such as homophobic and transphobic bullying have moved from being the marginal concerns in the LGBT community to being issues that are discussed on primetime television and primetime radio. Our last number of presidents have spoken very passionately about LGBT youth, and we've got a lot of, I suppose, celebrity support for the issues. So on the surface level, in many ways, it all looks good. It all looks like we're doing really well. And actually, I think what often happens, particularly amongst older people and older activists, is that an image is created that young people have never had it so good. But actually, I think quite the opposite is often the truth today. And I often like to talk about the It Gets Better campaign, and it always sounds like I'm giving out that, and it's very nasty to be slagging off somebody else's campaign, but I just want to use it as an example of what I would describe as the individualisation of rights approach to supporting LGBT young people, as opposed to any attempt to effect systemic change. So I'm sure you all know the It Gets Better campaign, and it became very well known after the tragic suicides of a number of young people in the States back in 2010. But I suppose the truth of the matter is that if we really think about it, things are getting better for some young people, but the better future that these videos promise is largely inaccessible to an awful lot of other young people. So I think it's problematic on a number of levels. As I said, it individualises cultures of homophobia and transphobia as experienced by LGBT young people. They make the whole notion of rights the responsibility of the young person themselves, so that if a young person struggles through homophobia and transphobia, at the end of it they'll have a bright future where they'll get their rights. But no, what would you say, no alternatives in terms of affecting any change are presented. I'm a fan of one called Diane Cage, and in her article, she's written an article called It Doesn't Get Better, You Get Stronger, in which she says, we're fans of the It Gets Better project started by Dan Savage to address bullying and to reach out to LGBT teens. It's beautiful and well intended, and I'm thankful it exists. But seriously, we all know it gets a lot better a lot sooner if you're white, cisgendered and middle class. For a lot of us it stays pretty hard. The reason the It Gets Better campaign and its enormous popularity is a good example of how LGBT rights are framed in an individualised manner. In this case, the young person, as I said, attains their rights after they struggle through homophobia. Is this piece that we're not actually looking at the systemic reasons why young people experience homophobia in schools. We're not looking at the issues of homophobic and transphobic education systems. We're not looking at religious bigotry and influence. We're not looking at LGBT young people's legal rights or lack thereof. We're not looking at violence, gender norms, inequality or poverty. Nonetheless, this important critique, notwithstanding the It Gets Better viral videos and the discourse that was generated, did highlight very serious life and death issues of homophobic and transphobic bullying of LGBT young people. A number of Irish studies have indicated that homophobia and transphobia are endemic in Irish schools, and that LGBT young people are disproportionately vulnerable to early and prolonged drug use. Supporting LGBT lives has found, wow, 1 minute. Really? Wow. Oh, for the film, perfect, okay. Wow, that was really fast. Supporting LGBT lives found that LGBT people were disproportionately vulnerable to suicide and to self-harm as well. See, the issue here is that there is no single issue or law that can be changed when it comes to improving the experiences of being young and LGBT in Ireland today. Where these young people are having tough times, it can often involve any combination of, just for example, poor mental health, poverty, class, inequalities, homelessness, addiction, violence, abuse, racism, sexism, ableism, poor access to education and health services, or lack of mobility and choice. These situations can often result in, can often be the result of enduring daily homophobia and transphobia. LGBT young people are more likely to experience this than adults. But often, I think if we're honest, we need to say that this is only part of the picture, and for many LGBT young people, they're living in intersections of prejudice. For example, a young lesbian traveller, or in intersections of injustice, such as young LGBT people who are today, in 2013, living in abject poverty. I need to introduce the video, and I'm going to do this very briefly by just talking about LGBT asylum seekers and refugees. And I think it's really important that we consider their experience when we talk about the direction of LGBT activism in Ireland and social exclusion in general. So we carried out a needs analysis a couple of years ago and started up a project specifically to support LGBT refugees and asylum seekers. And in these interviews, young people told us that living within direct provision or hostel-style accommodation provided by the state posed major problems, and many had experienced violence, including sexual violence, from other residents. They said that coming out as LGBT as an asylum seeker in direct provision was rarely possible within the system, and fears around confidentiality and being outed by others meant that they lived in continuous fear. The restrictions of life as an LGBT asylum seeker in direct provisions was seriously highlighted. One young person noted that other than having food and shelter, the only positive aspect of direct provision was that they were free to leave the building. Imagine living your life in that way. Participation in other aspects of the LGBT community were mixed. At times it was helpful, but at other times LGBT asylum seekers talked about experiencing serious levels of racism within the LGBT community, especially in commercial gay venues, from doormen, from barmen, and from other patrons. One young person talked about going to a gay bar and as a black man being assumed that she was a prostitute, and young women, when they went to gay venues, because they were black, were presumed to be heterosexual, as in a black woman couldn't be lesbian. It's also important to note that despite Article 14 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which states everyone has a right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution, Ireland's overall acceptance rate of asylum applications, whether LGBT or not, is only 5%. So 95% of people who come to Ireland to seek asylum are refused that asylum. I think we're talking about social exclusion and our community and what we're doing about it. I think there's a lot there to consider. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a video that my colleagues Caroline and David and Marissa made, and it actually is basically just 3 young people telling their stories of what it's like to be an LGBT asylum seeker in Ireland.
The first person I told was my mother. She was shocked. Then she was saying, "Not in my house, not my daughter." My father used to tell me that those things are for whites. It's not for black people. It's a taboo. My father have a sister. The sister was married to a pastor. So they sent me to go and stay with my aunt. The pastor will be, praying every day. Them, they think maybe they are helping me, but they were confusing me the more. The pastor explained to me, as a girl, you have to get married. I explained to him that, you're just wasting your time. because I know what I want and I know how I feel. Then after that, what happened is, he was talking to my father on phone. It didn't come into my mind what they were planning. But the following day, I was sleeping. The pastor came to my room and, I don't know what happened, but he raped me. Yeah. I think they were thinking maybe they are trying to correct me. My father was always repeating that the pastor is trying to teach you a straightforward lifestyle for a woman. When you grow up, when you have your kids, you are going to go and say thank you to him. You won't even waste your time going to report it because there is no action. They don't consider it like you rape someone. And any police who just ask, what's your case about? You are the ones who are causing problems in the country by doing those unnatural things. At least here I will know that I'm safe. I won't be scared that maybe I'll be arrested. When I went to the interview, they responded to me after 30 days that no, you can't be accepted as a refugee in Ireland. So since that time, I'm still waiting for the date of the appeal. It's not easy, but don't have a choice.
The reason I got my refugee status is based on my gender, yes. It also based on where I come from. It is very difficult and hard for a transgender person living in a Muslim country. When my dad found out that I was different, he said that if you're gonna be a transgender, a lady boy, there'll be no future, and no career, no family. You will end up alone. The only way to survive is to end up in the sex industry, and that will be a terrible thing. After moving to Dublin, life has changed for me. Whatever people say about Ireland is being old-fashioned and all, and I find people are actually very open-minded. I would like to show my family, especially my dad, that I don't have to end up in the sex industry. I can have a normal life just like he did.
I didn't want to leave Africa, but I had to. At that time in my life, it was very difficult living there, and I was afraid of anything that could happen to me. I know of a number of people who've been arrested, some even maybe ambushed in the hotels, some in their homes, some have been beaten to death. Because culturally and spiritually and also according to the law of the country is something which is not condoned. Now, when I applied for asylum, they refused my refugee status. After that, I appealed. They also refused. So after appeal, the only option was to apply to remain in the country. I'm living in a direct provision center. In the share accommodation, there's not much privacy. Like, I'm always afraid they might get to know about me. I'm afraid of being deported because running away to come live in a safe place is my main reason for coming here. If it was not for belong to, I've been living a very depressed life.